Hello and welcome to another edition of the Gumshoe Stories podcast. My name is Tim Koval, and today we're going to be looking at 10 myths of the Missy Bevers case. Things that people seem to popularly believe about the murder and its aftermath, but things which really aren't true. So we're going to take a look at these things, and I'm just going to dive right in because your time is valuable as well as mine. So we're just going to start with myth number 1 of the Missy Bevers case, and it is that Randy Beavers is the suspect that is seen in the church. Yeah, this is false. So many people believe that Randy Beavers, who is the father-in-law of Missy Bevers, was the person who is seen in the video because of other video footage that shows his walk with a duck-footed walk with the toes pointed outward. And some people have taken offense to maybe his demeanor and laughing nervously or smiling at the wrong moments or whatever. But Randy Beavers is not the person in the church video, period. Randy was with his wife traveling by RV in Oceanside, California at the time of the murder. They were thousands of miles away. They have a picture posted on social media on Sunday afternoon just before the murder happened on Monday morning, and they were on a golf course in Oceanside, California with a third party. Plus, police said that they independently confirmed Randy's alibi themselves through interviews and through electronic records. It is not him in the church. Brandon, his son, noted in a TV interview that Randy has a spinal condition in which the upper vertebrae are fused together, which makes it impossible for him to angle his neck upward. And so the suspect, when they kind of angle their head upward in surprise, I guess, as they encounter that split door or Dutch door, that couldn't have been Randy. He can't move his head that way. And by the way, for those who want to cast further suspicion on Randy for being conveniently out of town at the time of the murder, well, he was always out of town. Randy did not live in Midlothian. He didn't live anywhere near Midlothian. He and his wife lived near Austin. So they were always out of town. So that's myth number 1. Randy Beavers, not the suspect seen in the church. Okay, myth number 2. This was a small town murder, making it more likely that Missy was killed by someone she knew. Well, this is kind of false. People talk about Midlothian being a small town, a place where brutal murders don't happen. Okay, that's partially true. Midlothian's not nearly as large as a lot of cities, and yes, murders are rare there. But while that's true, it isn't the complete picture. First, Midlothian is not some landlocked town like, for example, Delphi, where the two girls, Abby and Liberty, were murdered. You know, that's a town that you have to intentionally go to. You don't happen upon it by accident. Midlothian, though, is right there where Highway 287 runs through it. It's an extremely busy corridor, especially for truck routes. Highway 287 stretches for 1,800 miles, and it's the longest 3-digit highway in America. And in Missy's case, the church where she was murdered is barely in the Midlothian zip code. It's not like anywhere near downtown. If you were downtown Midlothian, say at City Hall, it would take you 12 minutes to drive from City Hall to the church. And 12 minutes may not sound like a long time, but when a good bit of that time is on the highway going 65, 70, 75, it's definitely on the outskirts is what I'm trying to say. This highway at that point at Midlothian is a northeast to southwest highway. And so from the church, if you go southwest just a short distance, you're not even going to be in Midlothian anymore. You'll be in Waxahachie. So my point is, there is at least opportunity and possibility that this murder was committed by someone with little to no ties to Missy or even to the area. Very close to the time of the murder in 2016, there was a pawn shop break-in that happened in that area that resulted in 7 people being arrested, and all but one of those 7 people were from Dallas. They weren't from those communities, not Midlothian, not Ovilla, Red Oak, Waxahachie, none of those areas. They were from outside. But Highway 287 makes it very easy to travel quickly to a place that is a rural location, which is where that church is. There's nothing around it but trees and land, and it's along a U.S. highway. That the fact that this location is where it is really muddies the waters in terms of who could have done this and why they would have done it. So to me, it is as likely that Missy was murdered by someone she didn't know as it is likely that she was killed by someone she did know. Myth number 3. The Altima had a bumper sticker on the back bumper. Okay, the Altima, we know we're talking about the car that was seen at the gun store at SWFA. By the way, I'm jumping into these myths and kind of going over details of the case, assuming that you know the basics of the case. I'm not really talking to the person who just stumbled upon the Missy Bevers case. I'm really addressing this to people who've been following the case all along. There's plenty of stuff out there. If you're brand new to the case, just Google Missy Bevers or go on YouTube and search up Missy Bevers and get yourself familiar with the case, and then come back and you'll be able to follow along. Okay, so back to the Altima. The Altima was the car seen at SWFA, obviously, and the police department, Midlothian PD, put out this grainy still photo of what appeared to show a bumper sticker, an oval bumper sticker on the back bumper. And most recently, TV coverage of the case on the Still a Mystery show from ID Network, which late August, they covered the Missy Bevers case on Still a Mystery, and I was fortunate enough to be interviewed for that show. But on that show, I was disappointed to hear former police spokesman Kevin Johnson spread that misinformation about the bumper sticker again. It was one thing to release a grainy still shot in May of 2016, appearing to show an oval sticker on it. But once we had access to the entire video, which came in December of 2016, like 7 months after the murder, one review of that video, and you can realize and tell right away that there is no bumper sticker. You see the car from multiple angles. You can look at it and see right off the bat there's no bumper sticker. So what's appearing on the car in that one grainy still shot, just as the car is about to leave the property, is a shadow or a reflection of the lighted oval SWFA sign that is on the side of the building. So how MPD could have gotten that wrong and still perpetuate the myth of it to this day is a real head scratcher. How many people have been out there keeping their eyes peeled for a silver Nissan Altima 2010 to 2012 with an oval bumper sticker on the back? And it's just been a waste of time. Real head scratcher. Okay, myth number 4. Missy's death was particularly brutal, or she was bludgeoned. I'm not going to get into all the gory details of things that people say were done to Missy's body, but you get the idea. You know, brutal, bludgeoned. Listen, it's all 100% rumor, and it's unsubstantiated by anything that police have said or that they've written. In the very first search warrant, which was for Missy's truck, it was dated the same day as the murder, like 6 p.m. on Monday night. It said that Missy died of a head wound. Those were the 2 words, head wound. But then after the autopsy, later warrants referred to puncture wounds to the head and chest. Now, I would also refer you to the CSI report, which Ellis County did when they assisted with the crime scene. Ellis County's CSI technician described the scene when he encountered Missy's body, and I'm sorry to be a little graphic here, but he mentions pools of blood as well as broken glass around Missy's body. He said nothing about blood splatter or blood spraying that you might expect from a bludgeoning or an attack with a blunt object or a sharp instrument, either one. The pooling of blood around the body, combined with the reported FBI data that we already know about that labels this as a murder by handgun, suggests to me that there was no overkill to this murder. I don't see any evidence of bludgeoning, no attempt to intentionally disfigure, nothing like that. I think that police backtracked from calling it a head wound to calling it puncture wounds to the head and chest, just simply an attempt on their part to be a little less precise, to keep more of the detail of how Missy died to themselves for their own investigative purposes. And I got no problem with that, really. I understand that they need to keep things to themselves so that they can test out a confession or test out an informant's what an informant tells them about someone's, information. So I get it. And I think that that's what happened in this case. All right, myth number 5, CT did it. Again, a false myth. CT did not do it. I'm not going to give any more name information than just those initials because this person has really gotten a bad rap, and I don't want to add to that. So I'll just refer to them as CT. Most of you who follow the case know exactly who I'm talking about. CT did not kill Missy. CT was the wife of a CG instructor, his initials AT, and that morning he was teaching his first CG class that morning at 5 a.m. at another location. Those two people, AT and CT, are parents of 4 young children, including one who was under age 1 at the time of the murder. So when you think about it, AT would have had to have either been part of the plot or a subsequent cover-up, because he would notice if his wife wasn't there when he got up to get ready to go to his class. He would have been up around the 4 a.m. range in order to be somewhere by 4:30 or 5, and so he would have known that she's not there. And then he would have left before she got back and would have left those 4 young children all alone. And a mother of 4, as CT is, with no criminal background, you're asking someone to believe that a mother who has never been in trouble with the law that we know of would have murdered another mother. Woman to woman, mother to mother, that's a statistical rarity. That type of murder does not happen often. Now, I can't explain exactly why CT and AT are on that initial target list of people that police released, but I do know that the rumor that Missy's daughter supposedly was telling police that Missy was scared of CT, that rumor's false. Missy and CT had never met, and the person that Missy was uneasy around was not CT. It's gotten twisted around to where people think that it's CT, but it wasn't. It was the wife of another CG instructor, not someone on the target list. So that's how stories and gossip get twisted around and people get things wrong. Okay, myth number 6. The killer did a lot of gratuitous vandalism to the church. This is false. In the video that's been made public, the killer does no more damage than he or she has to in order to break into locked areas. He's not smashing holes in sheetrock with his hammer just for the heck of it. He breaks a vertical window in 2 different doors because that's an easier way to gain entry than prying those doors open. Think about it, all you have to do is just break that glass out, reach inside, and you have access to the latch from the interior, and you can just disengage it and open the door. A lot easier than trying to pry the door open. So we do know that a couple of windows that are near the kitchen were broken, as well as the doors at the northeast entrance. So right around that corner, around to the north side, you've got an entrance with doors that have been smashed to some degree. You've got windows that are the kitchen dining area, 2 windows that are raised off the ground that someone really couldn't climb through. But those windows are broken. We don't know whether they were broken in or broken out, only that they were broken. And then, of course, the kitchen door. We have the vertical window of that kitchen door broken. Now, from the police geofence warrant, the point is made in that warrant that the killer may have been testing for the presence of an alarm system. So if I'm trying to think like this person, I'm thinking that I'll throw something through a window or 2, and maybe then it's going to occur to me that maybe the alarm system is rigged for breaching doors rather than windows. So then I'm going to think maybe I don't just need to stop at a window. Maybe I need to break through an entrance as well, just to be absolutely sure that the things that I've done should have been enough, to trigger an alarm if an alarm is present. So I'm thinking that that's what this perpetrator was doing. They tried some windows, and then they thought a little bit further and thought that they should go to the next step and actually break through a main door. And so that's what they did. But other than the breaches that could have been connected to the alarm testing and the breaches to the interior locked doors that they did in order to gain access to rooms, this killer is just not wandering around breaking stuff just for the heck of it. So the myth that a lot of gratuitous vandalism is happening within this church is just not true. Myth number 7. The church and SWFA are across the street from one another. This is false. I've seen more than one person use that phrase, across the street, and it's false. The church and SWFA are 0.8 of a mile apart, so almost a mile. That is not across from one another. Now, if you go to my Gumshoe Stories YouTube channel, I've got a video in which I drive from the church to SWFA, and it gives you a really good idea of the distance. It takes me 38 seconds to go from driveway to driveway. That's pulling onto a highway, accelerating normally to 65, 70 miles an hour, whatever it was, and then decelerating normally to turn into SWFA. 38 seconds. That's a significant distance. Now, these buildings are inside of one another, and at night you can see the lights, but you're not going to be able to make out detail at that distance of 0.8 of a mile. Once again, go to Gumshoe Stories on YouTube, on my channel. I've got some videos there. One of them is called Driving from the Church to SWFA, and that'll give you a good idea. Myth number 8. The first arriving camper that morning got there extra early for a 5 a.m. class. That's actually false. The first camper was not early at all because he wasn't there for a 5 o'clock class. He was there for a 4:30 class. This is what was called early bird workouts. Missy let some campers come half an hour early because that better suited their schedules, I suppose. And so this first arriving camper got there right on time at either 4:30 or 4:35. We've heard both times. But he was either right on time or he was 5 minutes late. Now, this camper, it was his first time to come to the camp at all. First time to come to that church for a camp at all. There were 2 other campers who were early birds too, and they would come on a regular basis at 4:30. But one of those early birds chose not to go to camp that morning with the rain and the weather and everything. The other early bird had a flat tire on the way to the church. So the only early bird was this one person. It was a male, and he got there and he waited under the awning. He didn't know that he actually could have gone ahead and gone into the church. As a very good source explained to me, Missy would unlock the door, but for anyone coming in behind her who wanted to get in, they had to first press a button. It's not clear exactly where that button was. I don't know for sure whether it was on the door handle itself or whether it was on the door or whether it was maybe on the wall to the right of the door, but there was a button, and by pushing it, you disengaged the lock mechanism on the door completely so that you could then pull on the door handle and open the door. Otherwise, if you didn't push the button first, the door wouldn't open and it would appear to be locked. And this is what the early bird camper thought was the case, because this was his first time. It had not been explained to him. Now, some have questioned the logic of having this button, why it would be there in the first place. To me, it makes perfect sense. In fact, I think it's pretty ingenious. Remember, first and foremost, this is a church. Think about the typical scenario at a church where you have a leader who's going to lead a meeting of some group inside the church. Maybe it's the choir director having an early morning or a late evening rehearsal with his choir. Maybe it's a Tuesday morning Bible study. You get the idea. There's plenty of times when it's off hours. There's not a service going on where the whole church congregation would be there. There's just kind of a smaller meeting. And they're not all going to be getting there at exactly the same time, right? So as the leader, you can stand guard at a locked door and open it from the inside for each person until everybody's arrived, meaning you can't be doing anything else during that time besides be a doorman. Or you can unlock it completely and then go on into your meeting room and just let everybody help themselves and come in, but that's going to leave the whole building unsecured. And then anybody and everybody could pull off Highway 287 into the lot and just walk inside. Or you can set it up the way this church did. And I have researched locking mechanisms, and they do make locks that work exactly like this. You initially unlock the door, but there's still an extra step, which the regulars know about, but a stranger off the street wouldn't. So you as the leader are free to go off to your meeting room and then wait for everyone to come on in. You don't have to stand there waiting for them. And you don't have much of a worry about any unauthorized people gaining entry to the building, because the people that are supposed to be there, they know about the button. They push it, they open the door, they go in. Somebody comes in that has never been there before and doesn't have any reason to be there, they're just going to pull on the handle, it's going to be locked, and so they're going to assume that it really is locked, and they're going to walk away. So you see, it makes total sense to have button access to the building. I completely believe, based on my sources, that this is the way it worked that morning. That it kept the early bird camper from entering the church, and that Missy's body was just out of sight from the arriving campers until someone arrived who knew about the button, realized that, hey, it's 5 a.m. now, class is supposed to be starting, and they pushed the button and went on in. And when you think about it, if there were no button, it wouldn't really make sense what happened as far as them getting in. Because if there's no button, then either that door is locked or it's unlocked. If it's locked, well, how did they get in later? Because Missy would have unlocked it. What would she have done with the keys? Her keys were actually on her tailgate. So how could she have locked it and then put her keys on her tailgate and then gone back inside? That couldn't have happened. So the other option would be maybe she just would leave the church unlocked. But if the church was unlocked, then why did that first arriving camper wait for 25 or 30 minutes under the awning and not be able to get in? Because surely, since he's on time or a little bit late, he's not going to just wait around till 5 o'clock, because his workout is supposed to be starting right now. So if the door was unlocked, he would have opened up the door. He would have grabbed the handle and pulled on it. So again, there's got to be the button access, because neither the locked nor the unlocked scenarios make any sense in terms of people either not being able to get into the church or people being able to get into the church but not going in. Okay, myth number 9. There is sound or audio in the church video, and the murder was captured on camera. This is false. The rumor about there being sound on that church video had to do with a CBS News Network clip that had Gayle King as the anchor, and there was a reporter as well. You've seen the video millions of times from different sources, and in every source there's no sound. It's just video. But then the CBS News clip gets passed around, and there's some kind of rustling, some sound that happens while they're playing that video footage of the perpetrator walking around and approaching that split door. And some people thought that the video and the audio matched up and that they were actually hearing a version of the video that had audio. Well, I spoke with several audio engineers, and they all agreed that the sound did not have the reverb or the live echo kind of effect that you would expect from a large, empty church with tile floors. And that what you're hearing is the reporter having a hot mic, a mic that really should have been turned off until they were ready to go to that reporter and have them speak. and that the reporter is just getting ready. The shuffling sound is likely her clip-on microphone, and it's rustling against her blouse. People thought that was the perpetrator walking, but if that perpetrator were walking on a tile floor in an empty church with high ceilings, there's going to be this clop, clop sound that echoes. But that's not what you hear. You hear a shuffling sound. So, no audio. It was just the in-studio sounds that were accompanying that video. Now, as for the rumor that the murder itself was captured on camera, that they haven't released it, but that there is footage, supposedly, of the perpetrator killing Missy, police stated repeatedly in press conferences and in search warrants that the murder was not captured on camera. They swore search warrants before a judge to get a judge to sign them, and their statements in there are pretty important because they're asking a judge to sign it, and they're swearing that what they've written there for the judge to read is accurate and true. And so on more than one occasion they said it wasn't captured on video. And also, according to a source that I've spoken with, it was also stated privately to family by the police department that the video does not record the murder. So that is another myth. There is no murder captured on video, and there's no sound or audio in the church video that we could hear. Now, myth number 10. The suspect hasn't been caught in more than 4 years because they are extremely smart. See, I think this is false. One trap that I see the public fall into time and time again when studying an unsolved murder is this idea that the killer is all-powerful and all-knowing. It turns into some big, complicated fan fiction, like someone's writing a script for a Hollywood movie. A person's imagination goes wild. They start assuming that the killer was way more in control of the situation than he or she really was. In Missy's case, many people tend to think that the killer planned everything out to a T, and I can't say that it's definitely false. For example, look at the BTK killer. BTK spent a lot of time profiling his victims. He was very cunning. That's something that you often see with psychopathic serial killers. They have high IQs. They often have an ego, and they want to get credit for what they've done, and that ended up being BTK's eventual downfall. But in Missy's case, there's no evidence that there's a serial killer at work. No one has tried to get credit. It seems to me that this killer was just more lucky than good. Missy often got to the church at 4 a.m. or a little after. This killer did not even emerge from the kitchen until 3:50. By the time he or she made it around to the awning entrance in that little clip of video that was released early on that still had timestamps on it, we could see that it was almost 4 a.m. It was like 3:58 when this killer passes in front of that awning entrance. And they're not even giving a glance toward the entrance itself, where the victim is supposed to be entering at any moment. No, the killer is a lot more interested in staring in the opposite direction, toward that Holy Grounds coffee area that has kind of an unusual roll-down door. So the killer's looking off to their left at that, instead of to their right, toward the awning entrance. And that suggests two things to me. Number one, this killer has never been in this church before. So something like the Holy Grounds is really getting their interest and curiosity up, because it looks a little different than a normal doored room. So I don't think they've ever been in this church before. And number two, the killer is either not expecting anybody to arrive, or else they're not expecting anybody to arrive for a good while yet. And when you think about how close this killer came to getting caught, it's mind-blowing. Missy enters the church at 4:18, and according to Kevin Johnson, she was murdered around 4:20. 2 regular early birds did not make it that morning, and the third was a first-timer who didn't know how to get in the door. These are things that the killer could not have planned. As far as this killer is concerned, those early birds that didn't make it on time could have gotten there simultaneously with Missy. I mean, she was late. She was getting there, at 4:20 almost. So there was no guarantee that she was going to be alone. So I continue to find myself struggling to understand this killer's motivations, whether he or she knew Missy or knew that anyone was going to be there at all. If this was a targeted attack, then why did they choose a scenario that would cut it so close and have such a high risk of failure? If it was untargeted, why were they there in the first place? So these are the questions that keep me up at night. But I hope that I've at least addressed some myths that maybe you've heard that you wondered were true, or maybe not true, and maybe it's given you some clarity that at least those things are not really true. Do me a favor and think about the Missy Bevers case. If you pray for her family and pray for justice. And don't forget about Missy. Share this case with anybody and everybody that you can to keep it alive, to keep it in the public interest so that we can find justice for Missy because she deserves that. Thanks for being with me. I'm Tim Koval with Gumshoe Stories. Please visit gumshoestories.com where you'll find my podcasts from the past. You'll find blog entries including an overview of the Missy Bevers case, as well as quick links to a lot of legal documents that have bearing on this case. So it's very interesting to look at. I also have a YouTube channel, Gumshoe Stories. Go there and look at the videos that I took from the church. Those should be interesting to you as well. Until next time, this is Tim Koval with Gumshoe Stories. Be safe.